I came home one random Tuesday afternoon, sun still hanging low, dust kicking up behind my tires, thinking about nothing more complicated than what I was going to eat for dinner, and my truck was gone. Just gone. No note, no warning, no orange sticker slapped on the windshield, nothing. The spot where it had been sitting for years, same gravel pad I'd parked on since I was a teenager helping my dad fix fences, was just empty like it had never existed. For a second, I honestly thought I was losing my mind, like maybe I parked it somewhere else, maybe I forgot, maybe I was finally turning into that guy. Then I saw the tire marks, fresh, dragged, angled wrong, and that's when it clicked. Somebody didn't just move my truck, they took it. And the only people dumb enough to do something like that were the HOA behind my property. Now, let me paint this real clear, because this matters. My land sits at the very end of a quiet little cul-de-sac, about 5 acres, been in my family over 3 decades, long before anyone thought about building cookie-cutter homes back there. What's behind me now is this tight, manicured HOA neighborhood called Cedar Ridge Estates. Yeah, one of those places where every mailbox matches and people lose sleep over grass height. They built it about 15 years ago, carved it right up against my back boundary line, and ever since then there's been this tension. Not open war, not at first, more like passive-aggressive nonsense. Letters about visual consistency, complaints about my work truck being unsightly. Someone once tried to tell me my fence color was emotionally disruptive. I wish I was kidding. But this was new. This crossed a line. So I start making calls, right there in my driveway, pacing, already feeling that slow burn building in my chest. First the police, non-emergency. They tell me it's probably a civil issue, not stolen if it was towed. Then I call around to local towing companies. Third one I hit says yeah, they've got it. I ask who authorized it, and the guy on the phone doesn't even hesitate, Cedar Ridge HOA. Of course. So now I'm driving across town, jaw clenched, rehearsing all the things I'm about to say, but also trying to stay calm, because I know how this goes. You lose your temper, suddenly you're the problem. I get to the impound lot, chain link fence, gravel everywhere, that hot rubber smell hanging in the air, and there it is, my truck, sitting like it's been arrested. I walk into the office, guy behind the counter barely looks up, slides a clipboard toward me like he's done this 1,000 times, and says, "That'll be $380. $380 to get my own truck back that was taken off my own land." I ask him, straight up, "Who told you this was HOA property?" He shrugs, says they gave an address, said it was abandoned, blocking community access. Abandoned. I almost laughed at that one. That truck had fresh mud on it from that morning. But here's the thing, I paid it. Not because I agreed, not because I was backing down, but because I knew right then, this wasn't over. This was just the beginning. I drove that truck straight back home, parked it in the exact same spot, and just sat there for a minute, engine ticking as it cooled down, looking out toward that neighborhood behind me. All those identical rooftops lined up like they thought they owned the horizon. And something shifted in my head. Because up until that moment, I'd been playing defense, ignoring their complaints, tolerating their nonsense, letting them think they had some kind of authority over land that wasn't theirs. But towing my truck? That wasn't a misunderstanding. That was a move. And if they wanted to play that game, I was about to learn the rules real quick. That night, I pulled out old folders from a metal cabinet in my garage, paperwork my dad kept going back decades, property deeds, surveys, maps that still smelled like dust and ink. I found the original boundary survey from the 90s, lines drawn clean and simple, nothing fancy, just truth on paper. But I didn't stop there, because something didn't feel right. If they were bold enough to tow my truck, they must have believed, really believed, they had a claim. And people don't get that confident unless someone told them they were right, or unless they've been getting away with something for a long time. So the next morning I went down to the county recorder's office, pulled the official records, and then I hired a licensed surveyor, guy named Rick, older, quiet type, the kind of man who doesn't say much but notices everything. I told him I wanted a full boundary confirmation, no shortcuts, no assumptions. He nodded like he'd seen this story before. And for the next couple days, he was out there with his equipment, measuring, marking, double-checking everything. I didn't hover. I just watched from a distance, coffee in hand, waiting. Because deep down, I had this feeling that something wasn't lining up. And when Rick finally walked up to me, holding those fresh survey documents. He didn't look surprised, but he did look interested. He said, "You're going to want to see this." And the way he said it, slow, deliberate, that's when I knew. This wasn't just about a towed truck anymore. This was about to get a whole lot bigger. All right, before I tell you what Rick found, because trust me, it changes everything. We gotta pause for a second and talk about how this kind of situation even happens, because on the surface it sounds insane. Like, how does an HOA just tow a vehicle off land they don't own and think that's okay? But here's the thing. According to standard procedure, HOAs operate on authority that feels a lot bigger than it actually is. They enforce rules inside their boundary, parking restrictions, aesthetics, community standards, but the key word there is inside. The moment they step outside their legal property lines, all that authority, it disappears. And that's where things get messy. From a legal perspective, what they did to me wasn't just overreach. It was potentially trespass, wrongful towing, even property interference, depending on how aggressive you want to get with it. But here's the twist. Most of the time, HOAs don't think they're doing anything wrong. And that's where the psychology kicks in. This is a psychological trap. When an organization like an HOA has been operating unchallenged for years, they start to blur the line between control and ownership. They assume that because something looks like it belongs to the neighborhood, it must belong to them. Especially in places where developments were built fast, with rushed surveys or lazy oversight. Small boundary errors can sit unnoticed for years, even decades. And once that false assumption becomes routine, it turns into confidence, and confidence turns into action. Towing my truck wasn't random. It was the result of years of unchecked assumption, mixed with a little bit of ego, maybe even annoyance that I never fell in line like the rest of their residents. And here's the dangerous part. Most people, when something like this happens, they just pay the fee, grumble about it, and move on. They don't check records, they don't question authority, they don't dig deeper. And that's exactly why situations like this keep happening. Because nobody stops to ask the one question that actually matters. Are they even allowed to do that? And me? Well, I had just decided I was going to find out. So Rick hands me the survey, right? Big sheet, clean lines, all the measurements printed out like there's no room left for interpretation. And he taps the corner with his finger, real calm, and says, "That cul-de-sac back there? It's not where they think it is." Now I step closer, squinting at the boundary line, and it takes me a second to process what I'm actually looking at, because the curved edge of their precious little turnaround, the one every single house in Cedar Ridge depends on to get in and out, is crossing over my property line. Not by an inch, not by some rounding error, 11 feet. 11 full feet into my land. I just stood there for a second, letting that sink in, and then I asked him to say it again, just to make sure I wasn't hearing what I wanted to hear. He nods, flips to another page, shows me the coordinates, the markers, the historical overlay compared to the original plat. Same conclusion every time. Their road, built about 15 years ago, was off. Bad survey, bad execution, nobody caught it, or nobody bothered to check. And just like that, everything shifted. Because now this wasn't about my truck anymore. This was about 15 years of daily trespass. Every car, every delivery van, every school bus rolling across land that legally belonged to me. I actually laughed, not because it was funny, but because the irony was just too perfect. They towed my truck for being on their property, and it turns out their entire neighborhood had been sitting on mine the whole time. Now here's where most people might hesitate. Maybe try to be diplomatic, maybe go knock on a door and have a conversation. But nah, I remembered that $380 bill sitting on my passenger seat. I remembered the way that towing guy didn't even blink when he told me to pay up, and I remembered every passive-aggressive note I'd ever gotten from that HOA. So I decided I was done playing nice. First thing I did was file a formal trespass complaint. Nothing dramatic, just official, documented, time-stamped. Then I called a contractor and had him install concrete bollards, solid, waist-high posts, right along my exact property line. Not an inch over, not an inch under. Precision matters when you're making a point. And we did it fast. Real fast. By the next morning, those bollards were set, lined up like a wall, cutting straight through the edge of their cul-de-sac. And just like that, their turnaround was gone. What used to be a smooth loop became a dead end overnight. Now imagine this. 42 households, all used to casually swinging their cars around that circle every day, suddenly waking up to a street that just stops. No room to turn. No space to maneuver. Just a narrow 200-foot stretch they now had to reverse out of, one car at a time. I didn't have to imagine it. I watched it. First it was confusion. People slowing down, rolling forward, realizing too late they couldn't turn. Then came the awkward 3-point turns, except there wasn't enough space, so it turned into 5-point turns, then 10. Then came frustration, doors slamming, hands in the air, someone yelling, "What the hell is this?" And I just stood there on my side of the line, coffee in hand, not saying a word. By midday, it escalated. A delivery van tried to back out, clipped a mailbox. A school bus pulled in, got stuck halfway, couldn't make the angle, had to reverse the entire length of the street while parents stood outside watching like it was a live show. Amazon drivers. Yeah, they were not having a good day. One of them just parked sideways and walked the rest of his route. And the best part? There wasn't a single thing they could legally do about it, because every single bollard was sitting exactly where my land began. It didn't even take 24 hours before I got the knock. Loud. Sharp. The kind of knock that isn't really a request, it's a demand. I opened the door, and there she was, the HOA president. Karen-type energy, but controlled, like she practiced this kind of confrontation in the mirror. She didn't even introduce herself, just launched straight in. "You need to remove those barriers immediately. You're obstructing community access." I leaned against the doorframe, let her finish, then said, real calm, "That's my property." She shook her head, quick, dismissive. "No, it's not. That's part of the subdivision's turnaround. It's been that way for years." And that's when I handed her the survey. Certified. Stamped. Fresh. I watched her eyes move across the page, watched the confidence drain out of her face in real time. She didn't say anything for a few seconds, just stared at it like it might change if she looked long enough. Then she muttered something about reviewing this with legal and turned around without another word. That was the last time she spoke to me like she had authority. A couple days later, I get a call, from their attorney this time. Tone completely different. Polite. Careful. The kind of voice you use when you realize you're not in control anymore. He tells me they've reviewed the survey, cross-checked it with county records, and yeah, the encroachment is real. No argument there. Then he lays out their options, like we're in some kind of negotiation now. Which, to be fair, we were. Option 1. They purchased the 11-foot strip of land from me, fair market value. Option 2. They redesign and rebuild the cul-de-sac entirely on their own property, which would mean tearing up pavement, regrading, permits, construction, the whole nightmare. I let him finish, didn't rush, didn't fill the silence. Then he asked the question he didn't want to ask. "What are you asking for the land?" And I had already thought about that. Not emotionally, not impulsively, strategically. Because this wasn't just dirt anymore. This was leverage. This was access. This was the functioning backbone of their entire neighborhood. So I said it clean, $285,000. Silence. Long silence. Then a small exhale on the other end, like he already knew that number was going to hurt. A day later, they came back with a counteroffer, $40,000. I actually smiled when I heard it. Not because it was funny, but because it told me everything I needed to know. They still thought this was a negotiation they could control. So I said no. Just that. No explanation, no justification. And then I walked back inside my house and went on with my day. The next 3 weeks? Chaos. Absolute chaos. I didn't have to do anything else. The situation handled itself. People backing into each other trying to get out. 2 minor fender benders reported. A moving truck blocked the entire street for 3 hours because there was nowhere to turn it around. And the one that really sealed it, a fire truck during a routine safety drill couldn't navigate the dead end properly and had to reverse out, slowly, awkwardly, with half the neighborhood watching. That's when it stopped being inconvenient and started being a liability. And HOAs? They care a lot about liability. About 3 weeks in, I get another call. Same attorney. Different tone. No more posturing. No more negotiation tactics. Straight to the point. We're prepared to meet your terms. And just like that, it was done. They paid the full $285,000, plus the $380 towing fee reimbursement, plus $12,000 to cover my legal and survey costs. We signed the paperwork, transferred the strip, and within days they had crews out there removing the bollards, restoring the cul-de-sac like nothing had ever happened. Smooth pavement, clean curve, back to normal. Like they could erase the whole thing. But here's the part one enjoy the most. Every single morning after that, I park my truck in the exact same spot on my gravel pad. Same angle, same position, like a quiet reminder. And not once, not a single time, has anyone from that HOA said another word to me about it.